so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on my show? I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want you to be on fire about the book Spirituality in the 21st Century. Its author is Frank Daversa. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do? Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Frank. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Great to meet you, Doctor.
I am so happy to have you on with me today. Now, as is tradition around here, we always allow our guests to take a moment to introduce themselves, if you will, to perhaps those few folks out there that are unfamiliar with you or your work. So first question to you, Frank, is what makes you you? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I was raised in the town of South Hempstead, New York. It was during my college years that I honed my writing skills. I earned my associate's degree in 1981 with honors. 2 years after earning my bachelor's degree in 1986, I moved to Houston, Texas. I worked 14 years in the corporate world before becoming a writer in 2007. I published my first web article on spirituality in 2008, my first book, Young Adolf, An Alternate History, in 2011. I published my second book, Politics in America, A Guide to the Two-Party System, in 2012. I've been on a spiritual journey since contracting a serious illness in 1997, which inspired me to write my latest book, Spirituality in the 21st Century.
Absolutely. Now, being an author, is that something that you have always wanted to do, or did you find that absolutely considering what's happened, it was time to share in the form of a book?
Well, I've always had a desire to express my thoughts effectively. I took a writing course in college to strengthen my skills. With the advent of email in the early 90s, that desire crystallized even further. When I lost my corporate job, I came up with the idea for a book on spirituality. I worked diligently on that idea starting in 2007. That effort led me to an article on spirituality, which in turn led me to my book. Over time, I gradually added more material to it. From start to finish, it has taken me 14 years to develop. During that time, I published 2 other books, which I mentioned.
Now, the title of your book, Spirituality in the 21st Century, you kind of touched on it a second ago, but why is that the proper title for this work that you're sharing with us now?
I wanted to write a book about contemporary spirituality. I wanted to take topics from the news and comment on them. I wanted to write a book that would be relevant well into the century. That's why I call it Spirituality in the 21st Century.
I like that concept. I do. Now, you mentioned that you had an illness. Can you tell us a little bit more about your illness and how it affects your day-to-day?
I have a psychiatric condition known as schizoaffective disorder, in which my thoughts sometimes become distorted and my emotions become withdrawn. When that happens, I lose my ability to socialize, and the only thing I can do is isolate myself from others until it subsides. It is impossible for me to think clearly during such times. I take medication to keep it under control. I had signs something strange was happening a few days leading up to my 40th birthday, which is when I lost all control. I entered into a manic state and felt compelled to throw away a lot of my extraneous belongings. Eventually, the manic state gave way to a series of prolonged depressions in which my thoughts became distorted. I was hospitalized on numerous occasions during this time. I haven't had a full episode since 2009, although I've had several smaller ones since then that would go away after a few hours or so. You see, I was an agnostic for 20 years leading up to the outbreak, and I firmly believe this illness was God's way of putting me back into spiritual alignment. It was during a low point in my illness that I renewed my faith in God. As a result, I began to view spirituality and life in a more enlightened way, which in turn inspired me to write a book on the subject.
Now, do you find that when you were having episodes that writing was a way for you to still not only be able to communicate with others, but it was a release, if you will, a way in which you were able to move through your episode?
Well, first of all, the worst part of my illness took place before I started writing. But in any event, I can't do anything when I have my illness. When I have an attack, I wasn't able to do any kind of writing at all.
I see. Thank you for clearing that up and sharing with us. Now, because I talk to so many authors about their books, which I love authors and the stories that everyone shares with the public, there's always that person who's the naysayer, right? That person who's going to be the Debbie Downer. So on behalf of that person that says, what makes your book so special? I want to ask that. What do you feel makes your book different than so many others that are in the category of self-help or spirituality?
The book cuts through religious dogma and presents the material in a straightforward, down-to-earth manner. It should be easy and enjoyable for any adult to read. In it, I talk about my life experiences in the world in general. I've been through a lot of adversity in my time, and I try to share the lessons I have learned along the way with my readers.
Now, when it comes to actually reading the book, and I ask this question of all of my authors, do you think that you wrote the book in such a way that people should read it literally from cover to cover, meaning page after page? Should they read it chapter by chapter and really digest it that way? Or should they read, a few pages a day, put it down, digest it, and then move on? What's your suggestion there?
Well, the book is about a 2-hour read, so you could probably read the whole thing in one sitting.
Now, I loved those types of books when we were really flying and traveling the way that we did, pre-COVID. I would love it because that means that I would have an opportunity to read a book during my layovers, because many times, especially when I was flying from coast to coast, I would have a 3-hour layover sometimes. So your book would be ideal in that situation. So thank you for doing that. Now, when it comes to the ideal reader, so many times authors will have a particular person in mind, like this is a book that's for a woman or for a man or for someone who's going through something similar, or for the caretaker of someone who's experiencing a similar story. Did you have a particular reader in mind when you were putting the book together?
Well, the book is primarily intended for progressive-minded adults, 18 years or older, who are not devoutly religious. More importantly, it is intended for all those who yearn for meaning in their lives and a vision with which to achieve it. I want to provide insight into spirituality, which I learned growing up.
And there are so many people who did not grow up in a particular faith, and not just in Christianity, but I've heard many people say, I grew up in a non-religious home, and our parents allowed us to explore and do that on our own. So I see what you mean for someone who perhaps didn't grow up having a religious background, but now they are starting to find their faith. I love it. I love it. Now, there are so many relationships that we have throughout our lifetime, and you talk about your thoughts about the various relationships that we have not only just as adults, but I'm sorry, not just as romantic relationships, but the various types of relationships that we have. Can you explain why you touch on that in your book?
Many factors go into making a good relationship: love, trust, dedication, sincerity, and romance, as well as what I call the 5 C's. 1. Compatibility, a strong personal interaction. 2. Communication, the ability to discuss the positive and negative aspects of the relationship in a constructive manner. 3. Compassion, an emotional bond toward the other person. 4. Commitment, a dedication to the success of the relationship. And 5. Compromise, the ability to negotiate differences fairly and amicably. Romantically speaking, it's natural that no two people are the same, so at some point there are going to be differences. This is where good communication plays an important role. If you can't successfully resolve disputes, the relationship has a limited future, no matter how beneficial the good attributes of either partner are. Communication contributes towards building an understanding and trust between the two parties, which, combined with the other 4 C's, helps build a distinct and healthy affection that can last a lifetime. If the bond of love between the two partners is strong, the relationship can lead to marriage. Or if your respective partner isn't able to follow the 5 C's, then he or she may not be ready for a serious relationship. One thing you don't want to do is rush into marriage.
Absolutely, and that is such a good piece of advice. And I know that for so many people, they almost talk about marriage from the aspect of, well, I guess we've been together long enough, we might as well get married. And that's how they kind of determine that they want to do it. So you're right, it's something that we should not rush into, that we should really and seriously have a conversation with each other about where you stand and what you want to do moving forward. I don't think anyone ever wants to be divorced, but we do have divorce rates here in the States that are kind of high. So I agree with you. Take your time and think about it. Make sure it is what you are supposed to do. Well, Frank, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
The title of my book is Spirituality in the 21st Century. If they want to purchase the book, they can visit my website. Just spell out my name, www.frankdaversa.biz. That's FRANK, D as in David, A, V as in Victor, ERSA.biz. There they will find more information about my book along with links to purchase it from Amazon.
I love it. Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Frank Daversa, and we're talking about his book, Spirituality in the 21st Century. Now, Frank, my question for you is about the process of putting the book together and becoming an author. For so many of the aspiring authors we have out there, they have no problems writing the book or even getting the book illustrated. They're just not sure how they want to have the book published. We have self-publishing and we have publishing houses out there. How did you determine which format would be the best for you to either self-publish or to use a publishing house?
It's difficult often to get a traditional publishing house to buy into your book. It costs me between around $500 to $1,000 to self-publish the book. That way you get the book in the public.
You are so right there, Frank. And, I find that many authors are choosing to self-publish just so that they have more control over the process, and especially those who are doing poetry, or it's about their personal story or their personal expression. They really want to make sure that no one changes that story, or they don't contaminate or alter the facts in any way, simply just to sell books. So I definitely understand why you chose to do it that way. Now, as far as the takeaway from your book, so many authors decide that there is an overarching theme that they carry throughout the book, and yours is that spirituality. But is there any other message or any other nugget of wisdom, if you will, that you want to make sure, if someone picks up a copy of your book, what do you want to make sure that they get having read the book?
Well, first I contend there are 5 fundamental principles necessary for achieving spiritual enlightenment. Follow them closely along with the rest of the book, and you should realize it in your lifetime. Second, there are 5 C's that make a relationship work. Adhere to them closely, and you will see it grow. Third, there are 3 important lessons the Earth needs to learn in the 21st century. The planet needs to support measures that actively address these lessons more fully.
Now, when it comes to writing, is there any bit of advice that when you were going through the process of putting your book together, be it that it was the writing, the actual writing, or the actual publishing, is there any bit of advice that you wish that you would have known before you started all of this? And I ask from the point of view of that aspiring author out there. Is there anything you wish you would have known beforehand that you, of course, learned along the way?
Well, I would recommend that first you get your information down on paper. Then you can go back and edit it for grammar and syntax. I had no problem writing my book. There weren't any obstacles in the way, really.
And thank you for mentioning that, because I know for so many authors, they do get writer's block, or they can't quite figure out, the twists and the turns that they ultimately want to present to the reader, and they have a hard go at it there. So thank you for sharing. Now, when you were writing, did you find that you needed a particular environment, or atmosphere? I know that for so many folks, they need it to be really quiet, or they like to write either early in the morning or late at night, before the world wakes up, or once the world has gone to sleep, so that they can find that sweet space for them. Did you have a need like that as well?
Yes, I needed it to be quiet so I can concentrate. And I am naturally a night person, so I did most of my writing in the evening.
I too am somewhat of a night owl, and I find that it is so easy for things to come to me during that time, or that, I was going to say time of day, but I guess that time of evening as well. I can definitely understand that. Now, when it comes to the future works of Frank Daversa, I know that for so many of the authors I talk to, they say, Dr. Angela, I have done one and I am done. Others will say, I've been bitten by the writer's bug. Where do you think you fall? Do you have other books that you wish to put out there?
No, I don't have any books really at present that I'm working on. I'm mostly spending my time promoting my latest book, Spirituality in the 21st Century.
I know that it is definitely something to think about and decide what to do when it comes to writing future works, or should you just stay comfortably where you are with the book that you have. So I definitely understand that. I love folks that say, nope, I did one and done. That's all God has given to me, so that's all I am going to work on for now. So I love it. Now, when it comes to how we should conduct our day-to-day lives. We're talking about spirituality in the 21st century. In our personal spirituality, do you think that we need to do more of prayer in our day-to-day lives, or do you think that we need to do more reading? Just in general, just your thoughts. Is there any one thing that you think folks could do a little bit more of to help them tap into that spiritual side of themselves?
Well, I would always recommend people getting more information, whether it be reading or the news.
That they need to do more reading. I have to agree with you there. I don't think that people spend enough time reading like they used to. When I was a little girl, I remember folks saying, pick up a book or cozy up with a book. I think that's why I like to spend time with authors here on my show, because I love good books. But nowadays it seems like we're taking things in on such smaller doses, if you will, as opposed to in a really good book. So reading, I think I agree with you there. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot by any means, but I know that for many of the authors I talk to, they would love to share a bit of an excerpt from their book. If you would like to share an excerpt, I would love to give you the opportunity to do that. Do you have a passage, a paragraph or two that you would like to share with our listeners today?
Yes. It is taken from chapter 13. It is a bridge for succinctness. Of all the problems that exist in the world today, there is one so pervasive it touches almost everyone in one way or another. It has been around since the dawn of humanity. Wars have been fought because of it. It is handed down from generation to generation. It manifests itself on both an individual and a societal level. This problem is intolerance. Intolerance is the unyielding adherence to one's opinions or prejudices, regardless of how damaging they may be. Tolerance, on the other hand, is the act of acceptance, the measure of a person's ability to effectively deal with difficulty. The question is, do we want to live life full of happiness or hostility? Our society is filled with intolerance against minorities, LGBT individuals, illegal immigrants, and others. For example, blacks have been disenfranchised and underprivileged throughout history, including the present. They are often unfairly targeted by law enforcement. Are we going to merely accept such practices or challenge them and become better citizens as a result? There is no room for complacency in this regard. We cannot rest our laurels and take for granted accomplishments made by previous generations. We conquered many forms of prejudice during the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement, but our work is not done. Unfortunately, we need to ask ourselves, does there need to be more or less tolerance in God's universe? The only rational and main answer to that question is more.
Absolutely. As you were talking, it just, makes me think that we do need to be reminded that Scripture tells us to love our neighbor. And it doesn't tell you the guy next door or the gal across the street, but it says love your neighbor. And I think that is so incredibly important. And then, as well as instructions about strangers as they come and how we are supposed to treat those who darken our door. So, you've given us something to think about there. So thank you so much for reminding us. Well, Frank Daversa, I have enjoyed my time with you here today. And thank you so much for sharing about your book with my listeners. Before I let you go, though, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Well, the title of my book is Spirituality in the 21st Century. They can purchase a copy if they visit my website. Just spell out my name, www.frankdaversa.biz, B-I-Z. There they will find more information about my look along with the links to purchase it from Amazon.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Frank, for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
My pleasure, Dr. Angela.
And listeners, thank you for spending some time with us here as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. You know what I like to do on my show? I want to enlighten. I want to inspire. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want you fired up about this book. The title, Reason of the Hope. 10 Issues a Christian Must Face Today. Its author is Ronie Magcamit, and you are going to be in for a treat. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do? Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Ronie. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
Hello, Dr. Angela. Thanks for having me. It's such a privilege to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on and spending time with us here today. Now, as is the tradition here on the show, we always give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps those one or two people out there that may not be familiar with you or with your work. So first question for you is, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you, you?
Okay. I'm here in Melbourne, Australia, and I've been working as an environmental engineer. I started working as a civil engineer, but actually enjoyed more of the environmental engineering world. And I've been a Christian for 30 years. I've been an engineer for 20 years. And I think I decided to marry up those two worlds of mine, because before, being a Christian is different from my professional career. And then probably recently I probably realized that I think it's time for me to really go ahead with really being a Christian. So this is me. I have a beautiful wife, Rose, and our daughter Beatrice, who's 13 years old. And pretty much leading and heading out one church here in Melbourne, Australia, and having a blast doing my professional work in my church. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that life simply presented that opportunity to you and you were able to seize the moment?
I actually tried to write my first document, or should I say a short book about my experiences 10 years ago. It didn't work out. I actually just reached 2 pages. That was around 2011. And then in 2019, I reignited that passion. I never thought of being an author myself, but I guess it's the calling of my faith at the moment. I thought that maybe it's time for me to really go in this one life goal that I have, because being a father myself, I thought of, if there's anything that I can give to my one and only child, I think it's the experience that I have, the walk in my faith, so that I can actually impart to her probably the all the experiences and the learnings that I have. So it's a process. It's a 10-year process, I say.
Now, the title of your book, Reason of the Hope, 10 Issues a Christian Must Face Today. Very interesting title. Why did you choose those words to entitle your book?
I'm actually very concerned about what's happening with Christianity nowadays. When I became a Christian at the young age of 13, I went to church and I was really convinced about, faith and about my belief in Jesus. But when I was in my university days and then I started working on my professional career, I started drifting away because I never thought that Christianity has enough evidence. All I know is, when someone preaches in the pulpit, and quotes some Bible verses, it's actually just, very superficial in a way. So in my 20s, I call that as my doubting stage. And in my 30s, I think I started to deconstruct my faith and realize that, hey, it's either you're in or you're out. And I believe when the great French mathematician Blaise Pascal, when he made a wager, either you believe in God or you're not, because this is probably the greatest decision of your life. So with regard to that, starting from that point, I actually tried to know all the things that matters to Christianity, to my belief. And that's why I came up with these 10 issues. And I believe that there are many people out there who shared the same experience as mine. Before, I wasn't sure about the Bible, about its reliability. Before, I wasn't sure about creation, about what the first book of the Bible was saying. Before, I wasn't sure about the end times. People are always saying, Christians are always accused of saying, oh, these people are just always saying about the end times. But what does the Bible say about that? And of course, I'm very passionate about the Reformation movement. Because of the Reformation, we have our Bibles today. I'm also very concerned about the Ten Commandments. Is it still really applicable to us today? Or was it just applicable to the Israel nation before? And the meat of this book is actually about apologetics, answering skeptics, agnostics, and atheists as well. And the rest of the book is actually all about Jesus Christ, his life, his miracles, the parables, his death and resurrection, and his second coming. So those are the things that I try to assemble and try to present as many of the learnings and point views that I learned over through the years.
Now, as far as the ideal reader is concerned, for many authors, they have a particular person in mind when they're crafting the book. This is for someone who is a beginner Christian. They've just been introduced into the faith. Other books perhaps are for someone who has grown up in the faith and they are much more mature. And some people like to write from a perspective that includes our high schoolers. Others will say you probably need a little bit of age on you, some life experience to be able to understand. Who is the ideal reader? Age group? Who's the ideal reader for your book, would you say?
This one, when I was writing it, I was actually targeting my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter. And then I realized, as more and more people, as I interact with more of them, those who are very new in faith, those who are in their teens, who are in their 20s, who were just newly baptized, and even those who are in 50s and 60s even, those people who have a lot of questions about their faith have a lot of things that I think is common in the book that I wrote. There's a lot of things that they've been asking and just couldn't find a good answer. Many people, especially the skeptics and the agnostics and the atheists, they ask questions to a Christian, and sometimes Christians, we tend to say, because the Bible says so, or because I have faith. And these answers are not good enough anymore, especially in this time, where people are so exposed to social media, where people are so exposed to, you can Google everything, really. And if we don't have a satisfying answer to anyone who asks us the reason of our faith, then we actually lose the plot. We actually lose the conversation. So I guess the book is actually written to young people, but then I realized that this book was actually appreciated by a lot of people who have been very long in the church,
so
but
it's for everyone.
Doesn't know how to answer. Yeah,
Great. So you're saying that it's for everyone. I love it. Now, as far as understanding your particular point of view, you said that you were an engineer, and we know that engineers can be quite analytical. They must be. It's about the numbers because everything has to fit together correctly. It needs to be proper and true. Where many people think about faith, sometimes being something that's more emotional, that it really hits us in our heart, and that it has to settle within us, and hence the word talking about spirit and mind and body and all of that. Where do you think that science and faith cross, or how do you address that in your book?
If someone will read the book, they will see the structure all across it, just dividing those 10 issues, and all those 10 issues are divided into further topics. That's how I approach things. And then when you look at the verses for each of the topics, then it actually tells you that that's the main framework where I'm coming from. But I guess being on this professional side, I have written a lot of technical reports myself. I have government clients, the private clients, the construction clients. All of them, I have to submit a technical report to them. And then I realized, you know what? If I can do that to my professional career, why can't I do it to my Christian journey as well? So that's where I'm coming from. I'm drawing my experience and my supposedly expertise on the subject matter. I'm not a theologian, but I do approach Christianity in a very structured way. So incorporating my know-how in technical report writing and my know-how now on the scriptures and my beliefs, I try to merge them with my experiences so that any person that will read the book will know that, I can relate to this person, because what I have gone through, all the challenges that, has gone through my life as well, I try to share it in the book as well, not just my point of views, but also my actual experiences. So this is where it becomes real to the reader.
Now we have about 2 minutes left in this segment, but I do want to ask you about what makes your book unique or different. I talk to authors on my show all of the time, and everyone says, my book is amazing, and I do interview amazing guests, so I have to agree with that to a certain degree. But with that being said, what makes your book different than some of the other books that are on the shelves or available on Amazon?
I have read a lot of Christian apologetic books myself, the likes of C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity, X, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, Greg Koppel's main book Tactics, Lee Strobel's Case for Christ, and on and on and on. These are great apologetic books. Reason of the Hope is a devotional apologetics book. And what I'm trying to present is the present truth that I've learned over through 30 years of my Christian journey. I'm not saying that this is the best apologetics book out there, definitely not. But I'm actually stepping on the shoulders of many, many great apologists of our time. I think apologetics in the Christian church has been in resurgence in the past 20, 30 years. But in the last 10 years alone, I have really noticed and observed that more and more people are diving into this ministry. Because when I look at the churches, we do have a lot of ministries within the church, youth ministry, family ministry, all of those ministries. But apologetics, you don't hear that much. So I say that this is another point of view in apologetics from an engineer's background, from an engineer's perspective. So I think this is one of the difference that this book offers to its readers.
I love it. I love it. Well, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Yep. The title of the book is Reason of the Hope, 10 Issues a Christian Must Face Today. And you can get your copies in Amazon.com. And you can also check out my website in www.reasonofthehope.org, where you can actually contact me as well if you have any queries about this book.
Alrighty, everyone, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Ronie Magcamit, and we're talking about his book, Reason of the Hope. I really like that title. Now, Ronie, my next question for you is, we all know that we live in a very digital world. We know that we are able to get books that are in ebook format. We're able to listen to books on Audible, so on and so forth. But yet we still write books. And sometimes people are confused as to whether or not they should read a book. They want to watch a video, and try to really figure out, do I watch a video? Do I listen? Do I read a book? What has been your experience or your feedback now that we live in a digital world? Do you think that people are still appreciating books as much as we used to?
That's a very, very good question. I will take the best case scenario, which is myself. 10 years ago, I'm not a reader at all. I seldom just, browse through a book and just, put it aside. But I think when you get older, like myself, I'm in my mid-40s now. Now my shelves at the back of my office is now full of very interesting books. And I think it's actually, I think a testament that when you grow older, or you probably go mature as well, you tend to read more books as well. I know right now most of the new generation prefers a 5-minute video in Google, but I realize, especially during the pandemic, that people are, the surge of books in the bookstores and ebooks have also surged as well. So now I realize that people still read books, and that's I think that's a very good testament of, people can still write and people can still read books.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I think that if we actually do things in a fun and exciting way, you can kind of have the best of both worlds. You can put a marketing video out there, and that's going to attract that particular demographic, that particular reader, who's going to then perhaps, maybe a younger crowd might do an Audible. They might do an ebook where they might gift their mother or godmother or, favorite teacher a hard copy book. So I see what you're saying. There's still a way that we're able to utilize all of the formats. That is so true. Now, your book subtitle tells us that there are 10 issues that you address. Now, I don't want you to give us all 10 issues because, I want them to have to pick up a copy or at least go to Amazon and try to, look at the table of contents themselves. With that being said, are there two points that you could share with us and let us know, why did you choose those particular 2 issues to include in the book?
2 out of 10, it's like choosing two best child out of 10 kids. But I think I'd probably choose the scripture's reliability. That's the first chapter, really. I think that's the foundation of the book itself. The Christian world is dependent upon the scriptures, upon the Bible. And I think recently there's been so many attacks against the Bible from non-Christians and from the atheistic world as well. They say that the Bible is not reliable, the Bible is not true. It's just a myth. It's just a legend now. But as I go deeper into the history and to all the evidences from the scientific and the philosophical point of views, now I'm more convinced that the reliability of the Bible is in no question at all. Archaeology has time and time again proved that the Bible, that we read the story in the Bible, that we can actually see it historically and archaeologically as well. All the stories, the people surrounding Jesus and his ministry, they are all, they all existed, as what Luke and the Gospels have written. So this is what probably is enticing me to write the first chapter of my book about the Bible's reliability. And if there's another one that I will have to choose, of course, it's about apologetics. What is apologetics anyway? It comes from the word apologia, which is, defending a position, which is, in our case, it's defending our faith. I think there's a lot of questions out there from a skeptic towards a Christian, and most of the time they will ask, how do you prove that God is real? How do you prove that the God that you serve is true? And I present to them, if they're not accepting the Bible first, then we'll have to approach them on a way that they can actually relate. So the top 3 arguments, I guess, that we can share to a skeptic that God is real and God is true is the 3 top tactical arguments that I always use, which is the moral argument, the teleological argument, and the cosmological argument. So without using the Bible at all, okay, because many people now reject the Bible, so okay, I'll try to present 3 first. So moral argument, it's just saying that evil exists, because most of the time they say that God cannot be true because evil exists. But what we're saying is, because evil exists, that means that good exists, and good only can come from God. So that's where we're coming from, the cosmological argument, the moral argument. But the cosmological argument is saying that everything in this universe existed. It has a beginning. That means it has a beginner. So if the universe is a beginner, that means we're talking about the God of the universe itself. So the cosmological argument is actually accepted by even skeptic scientists, because they all agree now that the universe has not been existent forever. They now accept that the universe must have a beginning. And for us as a Christian, it's actually good news, because now we can say to them that, yep, the universe is a beginning, and we know who started this universe at all. And the third one is the teleological argument. Of all the arguments that we can present to a skeptic, the teleological argument seems to be the strongest one. That still a lot of them is struggling to answer, because the teleological argument is just saying that the universe and everything in it is well designed, that you cannot discard the cause for its design. There must be a designer of this universe. Just look at our cells. The 40 to 50 trillion cells that we have with 3 billion pairs of DNA, it cannot be an accident. Look at just the magnificence of the universe, the 100 billion stars in just in our own Milky Way galaxy. It just cannot be a coincidence. So just looking at the mind, the things of the atom to the cells, to our human body, to the earth itself, and to the solar system, and throughout all the universe, there must be a designer. It calls for a magnificent designer, and that's the designer is what we call God. So just using those 3 arguments, the apologetic side and the biblical reliability, those are just some of the things that I touch on this book, and they can read more about it.
Now, with all that you have shared, and thank you for giving us a little sample of what the book is about, what is your overall goal as far as what the reader will take away having completely read your book?
I think the goal is, when I finish this book, the covenant or the prayer that I have is that, Lord, if you think that this book will at least bring one soul to the feet of Christ, that's a success already for me. And of course, one soul for heaven is already a win, but if there's more, then it's God's will already. So that's the hope of my book, at least one person accepting Christ, or one person that will at least try to read the Bible all over again. I think many of the Christians nowadays, especially based on the survey that I noticed recently, 3 out of 4 students from a Christian family leave the church when they enter a liberal university, a university that teaches them evolution, a university that teaches them atheistic philosophy. And when they do that, the church is staggered, is shaken up. But I think if this book can help at least one of those students, one of those young professionals, to review their faith again, deconstruct their faith again, and see the beauty of Jesus in it, that will be the success of this book. That's the hope that I have, and that's actually the reason of the hope that I have as well.
And you said a mouthful there, because I think I have to agree with you. I do not think that as many families are looking realistically at what college and universities are doing to the students how they're influencing the students while they are there. I have literally not only heard people make the comment, I've read articles where students have said, my professor said, you may have come in one particular way, but you're going to leave a totally different person when it comes to their faith and how they believe things to be true. You're going to leave a totally different way. And it's like, I wonder why they didn't say that to the parent, who's paying the tuition. Why didn't they say that to the parent? Would the parent still have chosen that college or university to send their child off to if they knew that was the goal of that particular professor or of that college or university? So you are so right. We need to really be careful and realize how important our Christian universities and college campuses are. You are so right there. My last question for you is about your future endeavors. I know that you've already authored, another book, but moving forward, do you plan on writing anything for the future, or do you believe that the books that you've written so far, that this is what you're offering the world for now?
Yep, this book, Reason of the Hope, 10 Issues the Christian Must Face Today, is, I guess, the first of the books, the many books that I'm planning to write. Actually, after this one, I've already written another one, which is Defending My Faith, which is mostly concentrated on apologetics. But right now, I'm also writing something more about the life and miracles of Jesus. So I guess the Reason of the Hope is the main book that I'm anchoring all of the other books that I'm trying to write at the moment. So I hope that it will be a blessing to many, and I hope that it will, inspire others to really review their faith. And yeah, that's basically the goal of this book.
Well, thank you again for spending time with us here today. But before I let you go one last time, could you remind everyone, please, what is the title of this book? Where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
All right. So the title of this book is Reason of the Hope, 10 Issues a Christian Must Face Today, and you can get your copies in Amazon.com and any other online retailers out there. And you can stay in contact with me at www.reasonofthehope.org, where you can email me as well.
Alrighty. Thank you again for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. And listeners, thank you for spending time with me as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.